Hey, welcome back, everybody. It's Sarcasm Speaks, Jared and Bob here. And we're doing a doubleheader tonight, but either way, just to kick it off here, I want to start with the stuff that's a little bit more current eventy, seeing that, this will come out at the normal time on Thursday. And the next episode we do will be out next Monday. So we don't have to deal with recording when we get back from Tampa over the weekend. So that'll be a fun trip. I just saw Joan sent us to the Bruins traded Trent Frederick away. So they're they're dumping. They're dumping the team. I mean, we knew the team probably
Oh,
wasn't going to
someone
be
said, yeah,
good.
but one of the kids said that too. Like, oh, Trent Frederick. It's like Trent Frederick doesn't make a damn bit of difference on this
He's
team.
a third line forward.
Third line forward. What are we talking about?
Yeah, yeah. But
It's like,
I mean,
it's like if Johnny Beecher goes tomorrow, it's like, oh, can't believe they got rid of Johnny Beecher. It's like,
yeah,
who?
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I mean, we knew they weren't going to be good in probably November.
I'm just glad that they're not statistically eliminated at this point.
True,
That
true.
was only
Yeah,
that was like one of my concerns.
yeah. I mean, they lost McAvoy during the Four Nations thing, and they lost
Lindholm.
Hampus Lindholm, right? Not
All right,
the
there's
other
two of
one.
them. Yep, Hampus.
Yeah. Um, so their top two defensemen are out. So I mean, it wasn't going to be great. Um, but yeah.
They're also just not very good either.
Well, that's true too. We were talking about that, right? But everyone around here is always like, "Oh, maybe they'll hang on. Maybe they'll do this." When that McAvoy and Lindholm news came out that they were both done for the year, I was like, "Good, good. That removes any hope that this team has of like kicking around and be like, oh, maybe they'll hang on. Nope. Now they're going to really suck. So we don't have to deal with that. Um, what we do have to deal with though, and this is one of the more current eventy events that's going on. Um, the tariffs went live today. So obviously, as is tradition, when our Thursday episode comes out, we record this on a Tuesday night. So today is March 4th. Um, the Trump tariffs on Canada and Mexico went into effect today. I think it was a 20% tariff on both countries. Um, the stock market tanked yesterday because it got announced that the tariffs were going to go into effect today. I don't understand finance and economics enough to understand why tariffing other countries lowers our country's stock market. But I mean, it happened. So, and that was the rationale. Um, as for anyone that doesn't know what this is at this point, a tariff is basically a tax on a foreign import, right? But what a lot of people will argue, and especially like people, on the political left side of the spectrum will try and say is the it's bad for consumers because the cost gets passed on to the consumer, which is true, right? So, for example, we've talked about this before, so I'll keep it brief. Um, Toyota makes a $1,000 car, right? You hit it with a 20% tariff, that $1,000 car now costs $1,200, right? Because it's a 20% tariff. And Toyota's not going to pay the extra $200 and lose on their profits. They're not going to let it cut into their profit. So now when that car is sold, it gets sold for $1,200 now instead of 1,000. So yeah, I mean, the cost does get passed on to the consumer, but again, this is Canada and Mexico. I don't know specifically. I know it's not zero, right? I know it's not nothing, but like, what do we really import from Canada?
Maple syrup.
I mean, that's the obvious answer,
Hmm.
right? Is maple syrup, but we can get
Beer.
that in Vermont. We're close enough to Vermont where we just get it here. Um,
Canadian club.
Yeah, Canadian club. So like Mexico, yeah, I get it. There's a lot of produce, right, that we get from Mexico because their climate is a lot better than ours, so they can grow shit year round and we
You know
can't.
what though? Probably don't have seasons.
Yeah, that's true. Must really suck to not have seasons in Mexico.
Do you know what it must be like to not wake up on Sunday and have it be 14 degrees?
Yeah, no, I can't, I don't know because when I woke up on Sunday, it was 14 degrees.
Yeah, lucky us.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, everyone's freaking out over the tariff thing. Again, I've said this before and I'll say it again. I'm fine with the tariffs as long as they also abolish the federal income tax, right? Which has been kicking around. Um, I think that needs to happen. I think they need to get rid of the federal income tax. Um, and at that point, right, like people just have more money. Again, just to use round numbers here, right? So if someone makes $100,000 a year, right, they fall into the 22% tax bracket. And again, not to get a popsicle headache, but because the 22% tax bracket, it's a progressive tax in the United States. So not everything you have is taxed at 22%. You fulfill the 10% bracket first, then you move to the, I think it's the 12%, and then the 17%, and then the 22% to fill out whatever. So I think your effective tax rate, if you make $100,000 a year, is probably somewhere around 17%, right, of your income. So again, round numbers here. You make $100,000 a year, you're paying $17,000 a year to the federal government in taxes, right? If you abolish the federal income tax, you now have, again, assuming you make $100,000, you have an extra $17,000 per year, right? What does that come out to? Like $1,200 a month, roughly, right? $600 a paycheck if you want to get that granular, like biweekly, if you get paid biweekly at least. $300 a paycheck if you get paid weekly. I can do math all day. Um, but regardless, that's $17,000 a year that you get to put back in your pocket, right? And now, if the cost of everything goes up because of tariffs, whatever, right? Because you have an extra $1,200 a month that you can now spend on shit, right? So I think it's beneficial for the economy, right? Because people have more money to spend. And if that tariff, right, gets passed on to the consumer, again, I know I've said this before, but what it effectively happens is it becomes a consumption tax, right? It's an unofficial consumption tax. Um, So the more stuff you buy, right, the more tax you pay because you're effectively paying the tariff for the company that's selling the product that you're buying. And again, that's only for stuff not made in the United States. So if you abolish the federal income tax and you make a pact, right, to only buy things that are made in the United States, well, then you're not going to pay any tariffs. So now you're going to keep that extra $17,000, right? Like you're going to pocket that to spend on other shit, right? So again, it's good. Like people spending money obviously is good for the economy, right? I can't imagine any scenario where spending money is bad for the economy, right? Now, if you want to talk about like the COVID uh, stimulus, whatever, that that wasn't necessarily people spending money. Well, in a vacuum, yes, that
So,
was good. That was good for the economy because people spent money. Now, where did the money come from that people spent, right? The government created that money out of thin air, right? They just printed more money and gave to people to spend. So where it came from also matters.
so,
Um,
I have heard this phrase though. When you give people more money to spend, you just have to be careful because if it fucks up the supply chain, then you have inflation and some of the shit we saw before.
right.
But theoretically, with uh it being maybe no, this is pure speculation. If it's like maybe normal times, people aren't buying like ridiculous stuff.
Right.
You would think.
Yeah.
No, I don't know if that's correct or not, but it sounds reasonable to me. Like, if because it's also a copycat thing, right? So if Toyota needs to start in our hypothetical, if they need to start charging 20% more, usually GM doesn't charge 20% less. They
Right.
just come up to meet
Well, they
the
increase
market.
by 17%, right? So they're still 3% cheaper, right, than a Toyota. So they can claim that they're cheaper, but they're making more money, right? They're making 17% more, whereas Toyota's profits actually stay the same, right? Because they just pass on that 20%.
Yeah, that's my only like one kind of problem with the American manufacturing thing is will the companies like I don't know how they do that. Like
Yeah.
how do you control that? Because if you are, like the GM of General Motors, is that it? Is that the parent company?
Yeah. They're the GM of GM.
Or the CEO or whatever you'd be. Like you can see what the market is and then just go, well, we can charge more for Yukons now.
Right.
And we get to keep more of it.
Right.
So that's my only like, and I don't know if there's any protections you can put in there. I don't know if like you can price a car that has to be, under the tariff. I don't know if you can do that.
No, you don't want to get yeah, me personally, right? I don't want the government getting involved in how much things cost, right? Like the federal government should not be saying like this thing cost X amount of dollars. Like I'm all set with that. You just kind
Yeah,
of
but I
you
was
have to
gonna
let the
say it's
market kind of play it.
like I don't know if there was a way to say like, hey, the median price of your car um must be, I don't know, 5% less of the median comparable foreign like I'm making shit up because I don't know what I'm talking about, but
Yeah.
because that's my only problem with bringing like the idea of like bringing manufacturing back is these companies aren't in business to make deals for us. They
Right.
aren't here to help you and me.
So the other half of that too is what's happening right now. So Toyota just announced that they're going to build a brand new manufacturing plant in like Indiana somewhere. So now they're going to start producing Toyotas in the United States. So if you buy the Toyotas that were produced in the United States, you don't pay the tariff, right? Yeah, it's a foreign company, but the car was built and assembled in the United States. Honda just announced that they're going to make a massive plant in Arizona, right? So now all the Hondas that are created and assembled in Arizona, you don't pay the tariff on that, right?
Now,
Because
don't
it's
get
not a
me
foreign
wrong.
import. So like that's the whole thought process behind it is, and then what's the trickle down from that, right? Is Honda opens up a massive factory in Arizona. Maybe they employ 3,000 people. Right now, you have 3,000 jobs in Arizona for people to work at a Honda factory, right?
Dude, do
And
not get me wrong. All of that is I'm all for all of those things. If there was a way to support that, yeah, I'm in. What I don't like is being told, oh, well, the tariffs are good because it means American stuff will be cheaper. And I'm just like,
yeah,
I
no,
don't trust companies to price it that
no,
way.
that's not true. That's anyone that says that is an idiot that doesn't understand how capitalism works, right? And that's if you want to call it the dark side of capitalism, then so be it, right? But that's just how it works. If company A is forced to pay a tariff which raises their price by 20%, then company B, which is a domestic company, is most likely going to raise their prices, like I said, by about 15 to 17%, enough where they can still be cheaper, right? They'll undercut the foreign company, but they make more profit, right? They make 15 to 17% more. Like, yeah, I mean, it is what it is, right? Like again, if you want to call that the dark side of capitalism, then that's the dark side of capitalism, right? I'm not going to argue with you on that because I think you probably be mostly correct about it. Yeah, I mean, capitalism isn't all sunshine and rainbows, right? Like, I'm not one of those people like beating the drum, like, oh, yeah, no, this is the only way. Yeah, I mean, it's the best way, right? That we know of currently. Um, doesn't mean it's perfect, right? Just because it's the best way that we know of doesn't mean that it doesn't have cons, right? Everything has pros and cons. Um, Personally, I think the pros of capitalism outweigh the cons, but I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh yeah, no, there's nothing wrong with capitalism. Like, obviously there's issues, right? Um, that's just kind of how it works, right? You have to accept that. So that's how I get to my point of if nothing changes, right? If if federal income tax stays the same, right? Now people are fucked because now everything is more expensive and people have the same amount of money. So things cost more, but they don't have more money in their pocket to spend more, right? Like that's kind of what I'm getting at. You need to have both, right? So if there's only tariffs, right, and there's no reduction or abolition, right? Like I get it. Maybe you don't want to completely abolish the federal income tax. Fine, whatever. Cut it in half, right? So instead of I think 27 or 28% is the highest bracket, 14% is the highest bracket now. So you just cut everything in half, right? 10% becomes 5, whatever. 15 becomes 7. Like do whatever you got to do, right? Just to put more money in people's pockets so they can afford the increase in costs. Because if you don't, then that's fucking stupid. You're just fucking over the people.
Hmm, interesting.
Yeah.
And a little bit so like we try to like play it down the line, and right now it seems like almost like everything they're doing is like so good. It's like they're finding all these problems in these agencies. Trump's gonna promote bringing manufacturing back to the United States. It can't all be good because
Yeah,
it's
and
all
it's
because
not.
it's the government, right?
Because I have something else that we'll get to after we're done with this that's going to shit on the Trump administration. So, yeah, to your point, we try and keep it straight down, as down the middle as possible. We're both, I would say, pragmatists, right? And like actually the guy that I talked to in California last week, the guy that wanted to retire to Rhode Island, was saying like, I don't really give a shit about politics too much. He goes, I just want a politician to do something that makes sense for everyone. He goes, I'm sick of politicians trying to cater to like 2% of their base or, trying to look good to a bunch of people. He goes, just do shit that makes sense to everybody. And I was like, that's a great way to put it. And I would say we're both of us are probably, closely aligned with that. Um, but yeah,
I'm skeptical on some of the stuff that's going on.
same.
And not that I think it's bad. I actually think most of the stuff that's going on is fine. I'm skeptical that the people will see the benefit because I
Yeah.
don't know that they will.
So how I look at it, right? And again, I know you and I are, well, maybe we're not. We're certainly in the silent majority, right? If we are a majority. Um, I was gonna say you and I are in the minority, but I have no idea, right? So if you spent the last 4 years, right, saying the government is fucked. Biden's a moron. He doesn't know anything, all this stuff. And then Trump comes in and immediately you're like, oh, the federal government is amazing. It's doing everything we needed to do. Look, it's perfect. No, you're just as bad, in my opinion, as the people for 4 years that were like fucking beating off to Joe Biden and oh, he's sharp as a tack and oh, there's nothing wrong with him and look at how great our government is and I stand with Ukraine and we need to support this and we need to and Putin bad and Trump bad. You're just as bad as those people. If you stand here right now and say, "Oh yeah, no, everything that the Republicans are doing right now is perfect." Like if you can't sit here and criticize the government for doing shit that doesn't make sense, then you're not actually thinking critically, which takes us back to I think that was the title of the last episode that we had was it's a critical thinking problem, right? People can't think critically. They just fall in line to however they're supposed to think, right? And it's like, no, listen, yeah, I mean, I voted for Trump and I was hoping that he would, his administration, right? Because that's the other thing too. It's not all him, it's his administration who he was pulling in. I was hoping that they would kind of right the ship and get things going. I mean, it's been 6 weeks, roughly. They're kind of trying.
They're doing a lot. They're doing a lot.
They're attempting, right? But like, I'm not gonna sit here and be like, oh yeah, no, it's just they're perfect, right? They're amazing. Now you got some stuff wrong, right? Like I said, I just said if they run this tariff thing and they don't do anything about reducing taxes so people have more money to afford the higher prices, that's fucked, right? You're destroying people. So yeah, I mean, you can't just sit there and be like, oh yeah, no, everything's great. Trump's awesome. Yeah, he's perfect. No, he's not perfect. He's getting some stuff wrong so far, right? He's not crushing it, right? He's doing okay.
We shall see, but
Yeah,
the the tariff thing, I don't know if I could be any more 50-50 on it.
yeah. No, I'm probably right there with you, right? Like I said, it's conditional. I support it as long as there's something on the back end to offset the higher prices, right? So again,
Or
I'm not
what's the
just gonna.
or what is the resolution here?
Well, now they're already talking, and that's why I said it's March 4th, because now they're already talking about they might pull back the tariffs by Thursday. Like came out, they might drop the tariffs on Thursday.
Here we are.
So that's what I mean. Like I get it. Like if you don't
Same
want
way
to
the
make it,
Epstein files were coming out.
so that's the next thing that I'm gonna get to.
Get right into it.
Yeah. So they have completely botched the Epstein files, in my opinion. Again, just my opinion, right? Just a guy, just a plain old idiot who, again, tries to be as down the middle as possible, tries to be a reasonable person. They've completely botched the Epstein release. Like there's no sugarcoating it. There's no like, well, maybe that. Nope. It absolute botch job. Terrible. All along, right? When Trump won, and he announced that Pam Bondi was going to be his AG, right back in like, November, December. She came out and said, "Yep, we're going to release the Epstein files. We're going to release everything." Kash Patel, right, when he was coming in to be the director of the FBI, he was given interviews, right, last year and before last year and prior, right, saying, "If I was ever to be the director of the FBI, day one, I'm releasing all the Epstein information." And the JFK files and the RFK files and the MLK stuff. He said day one, it's all going. And Kash Patel in particular goes, and the other 7 pages of the 9/11 report. Well, Mr. Patel, you've now been in your position for probably about 3 weeks. What happened on day one, right? What happened on day one?
Oh, fucking politician.
Now, Pam Bondi, right, the attorney general, who is effectively the most powerful lawyer in the country, um, she said, "Oh yeah, we're going to release all the Epstein stuff." What did they do? They held a stupid fucking press event where they had like, all these like Twitter Republicans, right? Like DC Drano and all these other guys that are all like big on social
Wait, hold
media.
on. That was an actual thing?
Yeah.
Like that was a real event
Yeah, they
in
had
real
them at the White
life?
House.
Oh
They
my
gave
God, I
them
thought that was a
binders.
parody.
They gave them binders that said Epstein Files Phase 1. Have you seen anything that got released?
Phase two?
Yeah, Phase 3, profit.
Profit.
Um, yeah, what is it? Buy underpants?
Phase one is collect underpants.
Yeah.
Phase two, phase three, profit.
Profit. So again, what happened on day one? What happened to, you hold this stupid fucking press event with Instagram people, give them binders that on the at top of the binder says Epstein files day one, phase one. Nothing gets released, right? Then Pam Bondi comes out and says, well, it turns out I don't have all the information. Okay, well, where is it? She then writes a letter to Kash Patel. Magically, that letter finds its way to social media. Imagine that. The Attorney General writes a personal letter to the director of the FBI, and somehow someone took a picture of it and put it on social media. But that's not staged or anything, right? Like,
Or it wasn't released on purpose.
yeah. And in her letter to Kash Patel, she said, Director Patel, something I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but it was Director Patel. I've just been made aware that not all the files in the Epstein case have been released to me, even though I requested them. I've just been informed that there are thousands of files in New York City. I need them within 48 hours or something like that. Okay. What happens the next day? The director of the New York City FBI field office resigned. Okay. All right. Certainly seems like a bit of a smoking gun, right? Pam Bondi comes out yesterday, I think, and said they just received a quite literal, right? They put literal in quotes, truckload of files on Epstein from New York City, from the New York field office. Okay, where's all the info? Where is everything?
You can see the last piece.
No.
Hmm. This would need to be fact checked
Nah, this
because
isn't a fact-based show.
I didn't fact check it. But Twitter told me that she announced that they had to redact anything that threatened national security.
Cool.
Now, if that's not true, whatever, I didn't look into it. Why? Because I don't give a fuck. Mostly because I thought that this is going the exact way I thought it would.
Yeah.
What's the rallying cry? What did the liberals want in 2020? They wanted fucking transgender this and fucking
Free school.
abortion that
They
and
wanted no student loans.
student loan fuckery. What do the Republicans want right now? They want the files. They want to know how the government fucking fucked them over. They want stick it to all those agencies after all these years. Does anyone not see that you're asking the government to fucking eat itself? Now, if anyone's going to do it, it's the guy at the top. Like, he is the one.
Right. And I think Elon is doing a pretty decent job
He's
be
trying, but
because he's not a government guy,
right.
right? So he doesn't give a fuck. If he's the head of a department that's supposed to cut stuff from the federal government, he doesn't give a fuck because he's not a federal bureaucrat.
But at the end of the day, and what are we seeing? They're just the fucking same.
Yep.
They're just the fucking same, but they have different opinions on different topics.
Yeah,
They're
they
the
wear red
same.
ties instead of blue
They're the
ties.
same. Republicans buy sneakers too.
Yeah.
They're the same fucking thing.
Yep.
They're fucking slimy. That's all they are. Nothing
Yep.
has changed on that front except where they put their effort. That has changed dramatically.
Yeah.
Which, if you align with that, that's fine. Like if you like, and I think so, again, I said it earlier, I think some of the stuff they've been doing is good. I do. And I think it's a more useful use of time than a lot of what the last administration was wasting their time on, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah.
I also think very practically. I don't give a fuck about anybody else. So it's like, you know what? I might not agree with you, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But I'm also not fucking buying this shit.
Yeah.
And like you said earlier, it's like, oh, new administration, everything's great. They're functioning awesomely. I'm like, no, it's the same thing. It's the same
Yeah.
thing. Oh, the Epstein files are coming. And I sat there, I go, we'll see.
Yep.
I don't know if I, because I probably didn't get into it with anyone. Maybe I've mentioned it a handful of times here and there. My thing was, we'll see. It better not come out all fucking redacted.
Yeah.
Because I know who I have spoke to this about. And they're like, no, it won't be redacted this time. I go, we'll see.
The only thing that makes sense to be redacted is the victims, right? Like if you want to protect the victims and
I would
redact
agree.
their names, yeah, that's
I
fine.
would agree. But what happens when you break out the Sharpie?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Ooh, that guy's on our side. Why don't we strike that
Yeah,
out?
see, that's my problem, right? That's what I'm afraid of because I don't give a fuck. Again, like you, I don't give a shit, Democrat, Republican, Independent, whatever. I don't care. If your name is on that list, I don't care if Donald Trump's name is on that list, right? If it gets proven that he was on that island for nefarious purposes, throw him in jail. I don't care. I don't care, right? And
You
that's
don't
what it
fuck with
comes down
kids. Like
to.
that's what like it
Yeah.
ultimately you don't fuck with kids.
Exactly. Dogs and kids and sort of old people, depending on
What is this,
the
tin
type
cup?
of old person. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah,
And I'm fucking serious. I'm gonna be even more pissed if that list is just a fucking Democrat witch hunt.
yeah. Well, so the
Because
other
again,
thing too,
anyone that's on that list should rot in hell in fucking whatever. But if that list comes out and it's like 75% fucking prominent Democrats and like not really any like prominent Republicans, I'm like you guys are fucking like all politicians are cunts. Every
yep,
single one of you.
yep,
Which shouldn't be new idea. I think people forgot somehow.
right. I mean, so the other thing too that I heard, speaking of, Dan Holloway's signature line of all politicians are cunts. He mentioned the other day too in a podcast I was listening to, and he goes, people forget, right? People are forgetting that, or failing to realize that there's not going to be like a definitive list of names, right? Like it's not like
There's not.
Jeffrey Epstein had a piece of paper that said this person, this person, this person, and like what they ordered, right? Or like, what they did with,
Yeah.
underage girls or boys or whatever happened, right? Like it's going to be flight logs
Phone
and
calls.
phone calls, yeah, and logs of stays on the island, right? So that was one of the things we talked about years ago, right? When this first came out. Just because someone's name is on the flight log isn't enough, again, in my opinion, to condemn them of any wrongdoing, right? Now, if someone's name is on the flight log 37 times, Bill Clinton,
You don't get the benefit of the doubt.
you don't get the
Sorry.
benefit of the doubt, right? If it's on there one, two, three times, okay, like you'll get the benefit of the doubt, right? From me, at least.
Well, even it's all relative, right? Like, say someone's on there, say it gets released that some dead guy went 45 times,
Yeah,
and then it goes Bill Clinton went 5 times. It's like five doesn't sound like that many.
right. Well, I think we already know he was on 37 times.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So yes, that was just it was probably a bad it was an example to make a point, but it was probably a bad example because he didn't just go 5 times.
right.
and he has a history.
Yeah.
We all fucking know what happened there. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
if it yeah, walks like a duck and quacks like a duck and
Right.
weighs as much as a pebble, it's a witch.
Because the other thing too, right, with that is who knows? Everyone seems to be pointing the finger towards Mossad, right? That he was some sort of Israeli intelligence operative. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. I don't know. I'm not here to speculate on any of that. But if he was part of any intelligence organization, which he most likely was, right? It doesn't matter which one, and you're running some sort of underage sex trafficking ring to compromise important people all over the world so that you can then like get them to do what you want them to do, right? Otherwise, you're effectively blackmailing them, right? It's probably going to take a few times to get that person in a compromised situation, right? So that's what I mean. Like, if someone's on there twice, yeah, I mean, that's not really going to do it for me, right? But if someone was on his plane flying to his island, you know, 6 times a year over a 12-year span, looks pretty fucking guilty to me.
You'd think. So the other thing is, I do have a brain now. Whether it works or not is remains to be seen. I let other people decide that. I think it works sometimes. I think most of the time it's not. Um, with the Epstein stuff, I get it that most of those people are kind of still around, so you have to figure out which bridges you're gonna burn. Why hasn't the JFK stuff come out?
Yeah, that's a good one. Where's the JFK stuff?
Like, where's the MLK? Like, all those people should be gone.
Yeah.
Like the Epstein, and that was the other thing. Oh, the Epstein list, it's coming out. I'm like, that's not gonna cut. Like, first of all, you're gonna redact everything. Second of all, it can't come out that fast. You people are like, that's the thing. You people are involved.
Yeah.
Like, I never believed for a second that that was coming out, and with any faith that it was coming out full, and with any faith that they wouldn't fuck around with it.
If you want to give me the Epstein stuff again, like you just said, because people are still around and because they, supposedly just found a truckload, right, of files in New York at the FBI office, and you want to take time to go through that, whatever, right? I'm not happy about it, but whatever, right? I'm not gonna stomp my feet and say I don't give a shit, just release everything. You could have released what you already had, right? Like you could have
Yeah.
already put that out,
The other thing
right?
too is I'm also not naive enough to believe that they're not working the deals. Like, hey,
Oh, yeah, for sure. Hey, your
Mr.
name's here.
Gates,
Yeah.
Mr. Gates. I won't, specifically mention which one before I accuse someone of being a diddler that isn't. But excuse me, Mr. Gates. What is a redaction worth to you?
Yeah.
Oh, it's worth X, Y, and Z. Why don't you add double A and we'll get that redacted right away. Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Yeah.
Okay. Because if you think that ain't happening either, you are fucking
Oh, for
stupid. I'm
sure. Oh,
sorry.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. What is a clear name worth to you?
Yeah.
And you can call me Don, as in Don Corleone, not
Yeah.
short for
Yeah.
Donald.
Yeah. But yeah, so like my thing is, yeah, sure, whatever on those files, but you have no excuse on the JFK files. Those have been sitting in a fucking box on a shelf for probably 40 years. Everyone's dead that was involved. There's not a single person that's still alive. And those files have just been sitting in a box for again 40 years. You have no excuse. So why you can't release those?
I forgot we got to do two. We got to wrap this up, don't
Yeah,
we?
we got to wrap this up.
Mine will be semi-quick. So PGA National this past week,
Yep.
here we go. Like, so for years it was the Honda, and its reputation was, course is too hard. The guys aren't going to go play it. So what happens in the first round? Jake Knapp shoots 59 and like 8 under, 7 under, all over the place.
Well,
And then they
last
have the,
year they converted one of the par fours to a par five, didn't they? Was that last year or
I
two
don't
years
know.
ago?
I don't know because it's par 71. And I
They
could
fucked
have sworn
around
it
with the
used to be
course.
70.
Yeah. They changed
Um,
it I think last year they changed it with a rye overseed
they
everywhere
did
on the
that this
grass.
year.
Or this year. Yeah. So it was
So I have
they
three
messed around.
prevailing thoughts. Number one, these guys are fucking nasty. And if you don't set the course up right, they will eat anything alive.
Yeah.
Two, anyone that wouldn't play there because it's too hard is a fucking cunt.
Hmm.
Three, Billy Horschel is a fucking cunt because he was bitching that it wasn't hard enough. And it's like, you just can't fucking help yourself.
Yeah. Professional golfers are the
For a
fucking
guy who's
worst.
won a bunch of tournaments, like he's actually won a handful, but he's a marginal fucking player because he almost lost his tour card and had to go win one of the fucking island tour events. Loser. He is a grade A loser.
Yeah.
Uh, four or D, I don't know how I've been listing these. Um, I think I'm open to playing it now. Because if it's a resort and it's not set up that way, it can't be that bad. A lot of water, yeah, but just hit it away from it.
Yeah. 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 And I mean,
So
those guys,
could
they
be in on.
complain when the course is too hard. They complain when the course isn't hard enough.
Oh, it's for years. Like, and that's the thing is like if you're cognizant, it's like, wow, the reputation of this event is that it's too hard and the best guys aren't going to come play. Like, hey, could you make it maybe a little bit easier? Yeah, we're just gonna give up fucking 59 and then 7, 8 under is the entire first page of the leaderboard. It's like
Yeah.
you just can't talk about you just can't help yourself.
Yeah.
But I could be in on PGA National,
Yeah.
knowing that it's like mostly setup stuff.
I feel like we're running short. Again, this is all relative, right? This is for the PGA guys, but I feel like we're running very thin on hard golf courses.
So this is I actually think it's the guys that are the problem. They don't want to play these hard, grinded out courses
Oh,
because
that's a good
you've seen
point.
it. PGA National can play hard. The Travelers played hard one year.
Yeah.
It played harder than the US Open. I think it was 2017. Because
Yeah.
US Open was at Erin Hills. I think they shot 16 under, kept going. In the very next week, the Travelers played way harder than the US Open.
Yeah.
It's possible. You can do it.
Right.
I don't think the guys want to. In that in for and it took me a long time to realize this too. The PGA Tour does not give a flying fuck about any of the fucking fans. And that should be very relevant for especially the last 4 years. They do not give a fuck. They could care less. You are not the product. You are not the consumer. The sponsors are.
Right.
And what makes the sponsors happy is the players. And what makes the players happy is what they want. The fan is fucking fifth down the line.
Yeah.
So you
It's
want to see
true.
a hard golf course? PGA Tour doesn't give a fuck. You want to see more interesting golf courses? PGA Tour still does not give a fuck. They do not care. You are less commercials? Yeah, fuck you. Do
Yeah.
not care. It is not about the fan.
Yeah.
Now take that the other way, and because I'm right, so you don't even bother disagreeing. I am right.
Right.
And when it comes to the fans, they say they're about you. They're not. So don't listen to them anymore. They're not. They don't care.
Yeah.
Billy Horschel. Oh, it's a shame that the course got too hard. Same guy did an interview about why they need smaller fields because they need more time to see their physio before a round like in daylight or some shit. It was fucking crazy. And they're talking about like, oh, a better product for the fans. How? How does you seeing the physio a little bit later in the day give me a better product?
Right.
It doesn't. Stop saying that. It's not
Yeah.
about us.
Yeah.
Um, So yeah, next about this time, maybe next February, I would like to go play golf in Florida somewhere, and PGA National could be an option.
I like that.
We'll see. But it's back on
So,
the table for a while. I'm like, fuck that, too hard, not playing.
yeah. All right. So my final thought will be a relatively quick one, and it has to do with what we were talking about earlier with taxes. Um, so in the fine state of Massachusetts, we get to pay something called excise tax if you own a vehicle, which is my favorite thing in the world because it's a tax that you pay for owning a car that you paid a sales tax on when you purchased the car with money that got taxed by your income tax. So it's the triple tax. It's my favorite thing ever is the excise tax in the fine state of Massachusetts. So I just got my excise tax bill because that's what happens at the beginning of the year. You pay it for the this year for 2025. I'm looking at my bill and I go, didn't I just get one of these? Like, yeah, let me like look back in my files, right? Because I have a little file cabinet. Like, let me check and see. Yeah, no, that's right. Because I purchased my car, right? My lease ended in September, and I purchased my car after the lease. I got an excise tax bill in January for October, November, December of 2024. And I was like, well, hold on. I also paid excise tax last February because when you have a lease, you still have to pay excise tax because somebody owns the car. And that somebody, in my case, was Toyota Financial, who owned the car and leased it to me. And when they had to pay the excise tax, they passed that tax on to me. So I got to pay the excise tax even though I didn't own the car. So my monthly payment increased by like whatever, $230 last February. So I paid excise tax on a car that I didn't own through Toyota last February. Then I then paid more excise tax on in January because I purchased the car. Now I actually own it for October, November, December. And now they sent me another bill, albeit it's the normal bill that I would actually expect anyway, to pay for 2025.
Is that 3 months correct?
I have no idea, but it's not a lot of money. And I truthfully, I don't want to spend the time to fight it.
Yeah, it doesn't seem correct, but
It's not. I guarantee you it's not. But I don't want to call the DMV or, the fucking tax
or you know what?
collector.
You know
I
what
just
would happen?
I don't want to go. I don't want to deal with the headache that it's going to turn
Toyota would re
into.
Toyota would receive a refund, and then you would have to get the money from Toyota. That's how it would probably work.
Yeah, yeah. It's like for the 3 months or whatever it was. I think it was like $50, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm not gonna go fucking nuts over $50. Like I just don't care. So I'm gonna pay it and I'm gonna bitch about it, but that's excise tax for you. So fantastic state we got here. And on that note, that's gonna do it for us here for game one. So thank you for watching. If you're on YouTube, don't forget to hit subscribe up above, hit the thumbs up down below. Subscribe if you're an audio only guy as well. Check us out on Instagram at Sarcasm Speaks Pod. Twitter is Sarcasm_speaks. Facebook is Sarcasm Speaks. Check out the show notes, support the sponsors, support us. And until next time, good night, everybody.